Hello, fantasy friends. I'm the Raging Redhead Cam Stewart from HotRoster today, and what a crazy weekend of football it was. Week 10 brought along a lot of great moments. Who would have thought that Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans might be the savior to some of your fantasy seasons? Amazing stuff. And Mariota was far from the only winner this weekend in fantasy and reality. Another kid was arguably this week's biggest winner. So let's dig into the biggest winners and losers of Week 10 in the NFL. Rumble, young man, rumble. Has there been a better rookie running back than Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys this season? Not only did Zeke rush for a 32-yard game-winning touchdown with 9 seconds left, the kid from Ohio State went off. He exploded for 114 yards rushing for 2 touchdowns. Oh, and he caught 2 passes for 95 yards, one of them an 83-yard catch and run to the house. All of that was good for a ridiculous 38 fantasy point day, easily the best in Week 10. Elliott now has 176 fantasy points this season. That ranks him 4th among any rookie running back over his first 9 games. Just to give you a little more insight here, Elliott's 9-game start is better than Adrian Peterson's, Marshall Faulk's, and Herschel Walker's. The kid is dynamite. He now has 1,000 yards rushing, and the boys still have 7 games left on the schedule. Expect more of the same from this year's Offensive Rookie of the Year, and yeah, I'm calling it now. No way this kid doesn't nab the title. Zeke is the real deal. Sticking in the NFC East, the Eagles' backfield might be in complete shambles, but it doesn't change the fact that Ryan Matthews had a day to remember in Philly. Despite head coach Doug Peterson saying Darren Sproles was the starter, Matthews carries the ball a team-high 19 times. He also had a team-high 138 total yards and 2 touchdowns against the Dirty Birds from Atlanta. That monster performance amounted to 27 fantasy points, the second highest total for any running back this week. Just insane when you consider Matthews only had 9 carries total over his last 2 weeks. This game was his first 100-yard rushing performance since Week 3 of 2015, a huge win for Mr. Matthews. On that note, another redemption story Sunday came from none other than Allen Robinson of the Jaguars. Look, I'll be the first to admit it, I've been critical of A-Rob, but hey, who hasn't? For starters, it doesn't help that Blake Bortles is the one tossing him the pigskin, and Robinson seemed sluggish over the first 9 weeks of the season, but now, all of a sudden, it seems like the 2015 Allen is back. Robinson caught 9 of 13 targets for 107 yards and a score against the Texans. This was Robinson's first 100-yard receiving performance of the season, and his 18-point day in fantasy was the best since Week 16 of last year. A-Rob now has consecutive weeks with double-digit fantasy points, something he's only done twice over the first 8 weeks of the season. Hopefully for owners, this is the turning point in A-Rob's season as he closes 2016 as a winner in fantasy. In that same game between the Jaguars and Texans, you might have also witnessed the continued regression of DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, I know there's no denying just how bad Brock Osweiler's been in Houston. I mean, the guy, he threw for 99 yards during the entire game. No, not just for 1 quarter, not for the half, 99 yards for the entire game. I literally had to double check the box score because I couldn't believe it myself. That type of production from Osweiler under center has affected Hopkins' performance big time. And on Sunday, despite seeing 13 targets, Hopkins caught 5 passes for 48 yards. Boo! Hopkins has now failed to top 60 yards receiving 7 times this year. I wouldn't expect anything to change, especially if Brock continues to be under center. Sorry, Hopkins owners. He might not only be one of this week's biggest losers, but he could arguably be this year's biggest bust at the wide receiver position. Another wide receiver who had a tough time on Sunday was Michael Thomas of the Saints. We did try to warn you the kid from Ohio State had to go up against the Denver Broncos secondary, which is arguably the best in the NFL. But I don't think anyone could have imagined it would have been this bad for Thomas. He did manage to catch 4 of 6 targets or 40 yards, which should have led to a 4-point day in fantasy. But Thomas actually fumbled not once, but twice, meaning he actually put up a goose egg on Sunday. I have to think that'll be the worst fantasy day of his career. Don't doubt the kid, though. Thomas is young and has promising talent. He'll be Drew Brees' new Marquise Colston eventually, but it just didn't happen for Thomas this week. And last but not least, how could I go another week without highlighting just how bad Todd Gurley of the Rams has been this season? Week by week, Gurley has constantly reminded us why he's the biggest bust of the fantasy season. On Sunday against the Jets, despite getting plenty of volume with 22 touches, he managed to tally 72 total yards. That's an average of 3.2 yards per touch. Just pathetic. And just like Brock Osweiler or Blake Bortles, his quarterback Case Keenum, this guy's not doing him any favors. I still believe Gurley has the talent to be great, but he's looking a lot more like Trent Richardson every week, and no one wants to be like T-Rich. No offense, Mr. Richardson. Either way, until Gurley shows me something more, he's nothing more than a volume-driven RB2 moving forward. Well, that's it for today, my fantasy football friends. Make sure you check in again tomorrow when I look ahead to the quarterback situation in Week 11. And for those of you who don't know what HotRoster is, go to HotRoster.com, check it out, download the app, give it a try. It's like no other fantasy sports game you've ever played. And then for help winning the game, check out HotRoster today with me and my buddy Gary and Thorne every weekday at 4:30 Eastern, only on the Fantasy Sports Network. For HotRoster Now, I'm Cam Stewart, and I'll see you on the virtual gridiron.